All right, I listened to the feed this morning and I discovered that on the feed, nobody said anything last week, but you can't hear the audio of a video. I played that video of the church service,
Yeah.
the Episcopal church service, and it's chopped up audio and there's chopped up video and there's no audio. Unless it's different live. In the recording, there's nothing.
What did you turn the feed on? Yeah, you just turn on.
Yeah.
Because I was gonna mention Brenda Barnett, but
What about Brenda?
she fell and broke her shoulder
Oh, no.
All right.
Friday night. So she's gonna have surgery.
To email us about that one.
We emailed the ladies scholarship group, but it hasn't gone beyond that yet, but I don't think she would mind.
Okay. Where are we at? We're at here. We're at here. It's good English, Gary. Let's go back and look at this. We've come a long way. We started here with the pre-modern era. We started here with with sort of modern Western origins, if you will. It's really not. I mean, Western civilization is really a hand-me-down of Greek civilization and then Roman, and then it's a hodgepodge and so forth. But anyway, we have this pre-modern era in Western history, which is very top-down, church-state fusion, alien world to the one that we live in today. Very much submissive to authority and tradition. The sort of unconditional acceptance of the idea of the Creator and human beings being created in God's image. Basically, the Nicene Creed. We believe in one God, the Father Almighty, the maker of heaven and earth, and so on and so forth. That's sort of the basis of the story they told themselves about their origin as people and as a culture. And then we reach the Enlightenment. Events happen like the Black Plague, which transforms European society and economics. And then out of that, you have the Renaissance, which rediscovers the classics and the past, which, for a world that was beholden to Latin in the church, the rediscovery, just the bare fact of going back and recovering the Greek sources is itself an act of rebellion against authority. And so by the time you get to the Reformation, all these spigots are beginning to open. And then by the Enlightenment, which follows naturally from the Reformation, it's full on. And so it's a complete transformation of Western culture, Western thinking, philosophy, religion, art, all of it. And now science becomes ascendant. So no longer are you going to tell yourselves the gatekeepers used to be the church, the Pope, church authority. The gatekeepers now are going to undergo a transformation. There's going to be a wholesale replacement of gatekeeping, and you're going to have now a secular, scientific, humanist kind of gatekeeping at all levels of government, in the government, in social structures. And that's the era that we're calling modern, as opposed to pre-modern. So religious pre-modern, secular humanist, gatekeeping modern. And the sort of supremacy of science and the scientific method and the new priesthood, which is the scientist. So it's false that we did away with priesthoods. We did not. We traded one priesthood for another, and we've done it again. There's always a priesthood. There's always a claim to gatekeeping every single time. That's never more true than with Marxists, which is where we're at. But we'll get back to that in a second. And so we ended up in this modern period, which was defined by its optimism, where we would recreate a better world, not based on religious ideology or superstition or those kinds of things, backwards thinking, but based on scientific and technological advancement and the improvement of human institutions, of government and so forth. That's the modern era. And it should still ring a bell in some people's minds. It's quaint at this point. But then a thing happened, which was World War I, the great tragedy, which unleashed pretty much all the other great tragedies of the 20th century, ones that we're still recovering from today. So out of World War I, you're gonna have, you know, the Spanish flu, Tsarist Russia gets replaced by Leninist Russia and then Stalinist Russia, and now we're into the deaths of tens of millions in the Soviet Union. Mao Zedong will depose Chiang Kai-shek, I think that's how you say his name, in China after World War World War II, and we bring in communist China. You have the Cultural Revolution. These names that they use, the Marxists use, they're always the opposite. Government's kind of like this too. Whatever the name of a thing is, you know, it's really, the effect is the opposite. So if you have a movement, if the communists define a movement called the Great Leap Forward, which is what Mao did, what do you think happens during the Great Leap Forward?
It went backwards.
You know, death and brutality on a scale rarely seen in human history. And so that, you know, communist China, Pol Pot in Cambodia, killing another communist movement, killing a third of his people at least, a third of 3 million, maybe more. The movie Killing Fields is a product of that event. What else do we have for, what else can World War I take credit for? The reorganization of the Middle East that ends up a disaster, up to and including Kuwait, and what happened with you know, where Israel sits right now, that land.
That was after World War I.
At World War II. Well, that was a result of World War II and the British, what's called the British Mandate, where they kept trying to figure out a way to solve this problem, and they always screw it up. It's unbelievable. It's almost mathematical.
Now, if I remember history correctly, and that's a big if, there was a lot of there was still optimism at the end of World War I, the war to end all wars, which was crushed with World War II.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, there was optimism. The League of Nations, which
Yeah,
failed.
Nations, which
That failed.
became the
Yeah. So anyway,
big failure.
we come out of World War II and this whole modern optimism. What did the technology get used for? Destruction and horrors on a scale never even imagined by the most prolific psychopaths of history. Stuff they could only salivate over, up to and including not just the invention of nuclear weapons, but the use of them. And so now we come out of World War II with a newly destabilized, with a permanently unstable world. We have a bipolar Soviet Union, Western and Eastern world. You know, got NATO on one side, the Warsaw Pact on the other, the United States on one side, the Soviet Union on the other, so on and so forth. And it's both stable and unstable at the same time. And Vietnam happens in there. And during that time we're transitioning from optimism to pessimism in the 50s and 60s, with Vietnam as kind of the lightning, you know, I don't know what you want to call it, the catalyst. You have a whole new reaction against modernism that has often been called postmodernism. And optimism is replaced by pessimism. And whereas there was an attempt at unification, the post World War II period, there was this optimism based on you know, this anti-national optimism. We're going to build a global world, a global village, a global world. Do you remember that language in the 90s with both Bush and Clinton? The New World Order. You know, we're going to build a better world. It's still better world thinking, right? We're going to spread democracy around the world. How'd that go? And so forth. Well, philosophically, the culture went in the direction of fragmentation and decentralization, not unification and centralization. And so those words there, we have then what people have called loss of faith in modernism, in science and technology, in the ruling authorities. So, you know, we don't want you, we want you to mistrust religious authority, says the modernists, but you need to trust us modernist secularists. We're in charge now and you can trust us. Well, the postmodernists rejected all of that and said, we've given up on authority completely. And so there's a wholesale loss of faith. And now, right down to the family level, there's fragmentation, pessimism. I think that about this time, you're going to see, maybe even into the 50s, you begin to see rises in divorce rates and alcoholism, all that kind of stuff. I don't know the statistics. We talked about it earlier this summer a little bit. But then now you're going to see, where does it go? Where does it go from there? Well, now it's a power vacuum in society. When decentralization happens, there's a power vacuum. And the most fervent and ruthless and so on and so forth, they're the ones who are usually going to win. And so what won out of that then was identity politics, which I'll define in a minute. Well, let's start with the first one. I should have these words rearranged. Intersectionality won, first of all. That is oppressor versus oppressed. Whoops. We'll get back to Drew Brees in a second here. Oppressor. Oh, what? Make it big again? Is that what you're saying?
I said, let's talk football.
No, we're not going to talk football. But oppressor versus oppressed, that in that top one there, prevailing narrative. What started out as everybody basically believed that they were in the pre-modern era created in the image of God is now devolved into you cannot, the only way to understand the world and everyone in it is through the lens of the oppressors and the oppressed. So the first thing I have to know is, am I in the oppressor classes, or am I in one of the oppressed classes? And when somebody talks to me, they have to say, when somebody talks to me, I have to say, are you in the oppressor class or one of the oppressed classes? That's the defining narrative of the gatekeepers. So there's this kind of, I don't know what you want to call it, competition to see who would win the gatekeeping. And so all these people from the 60s, you know, when all of this sort of got inflamed, they make their way into academia and media and so on and so forth until they win. And they become the gatekeepers and attempt to centralize on this idea of group identity. You are defined by your race, gender, and sexuality. Everything else falls into a distant memory, or distant, it's a haze out there. What matters is, what is your group identity? This is the root of cultural Marxism in the 21st century. And so once I understand your group identity, I can understand more about where you are in the oppressor versus oppressed classes.
Does this have ramifications for the more modern thrust to trace back to your heritage and all that stuff then?
That might be a reaction against it. You know, people rediscovering. It didn't work. It's false that the centralization worked. Mm-hmm. There's been a wholesale decentralization, a tremendous, the decentralizing forces are tremendous in entertainment and media, everywhere. Nobody's been able to hold the narrative. And so part of that is with the internet, you know, these companies pop up and say, you know what we can do with this new tech? We're going to use technology for decentralization. They don't do it consciously, but you send us a blood sample or whatever sample, and we can tell you where you're from, and you can rediscover your roots. And this here becomes irrelevant. And I suddenly am delighted to find out that I'm from a certain area and I rediscover my past. And part of the gatekeeping of today is to cut you off from the past, except insofar as it can reinforce the oppressor narrative, which is everywhere. But that didn't work either. And so, you know, this is where we're at. You know, this is where we're transitioning. We're in the middle of some kind of transition happening that I've renamed some of this stuff after I thought about it. You'll notice the change in that top one. Third wave feminist intersectional ascendancy. That's the way I describe it. And I moved it into the 2010s. As I see it, that's what happened. They took control of the gatekeeping. Didn't last very long. Didn't work for very long. And so, what was this? We'll get back to the church in a minute. And so there's been a reaction. Intersectionality has, intersectionality, why did I even stop the? Intersectional feminism has taken a big hit. It owned government institutions worldwide, up to and including the United Nations and the European Union and the World Bank, Department of State, you name it, CIA, FBI, all of it, every single bit of it. It owned Hollywood, the major media outlets with very few exceptions, and even then, even the ones that weren't owned by it necessarily still nod to it, still have to pledge allegiance to it in some form or another. But across the board, everywhere, intersectional feminism has won, including corporate boardrooms. And so you can go to all these websites. Target finds itself in the middle of a backlash that never could have anticipated. Starbucks did the same thing. So Target went all in on intersectional feminism, which is to say LGBTQ and DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. They went all in, good for business, and including also environmental justice and sustainability. That's what they call it, because the last words didn't work. That's another thing that happens. You try words like social justice, the words begin to get mocked, they don't work very well, so they change the words to other words. Well, social justice became DEI. Now DEI isn't working. And there's been a wholesale reaction against DEI. So now they're changing I think the new ones are words like belonging. They're promoting belonging instead of DEI, you know. But sure, go ahead, change the words. You know, see how it goes. And so if you look at these websites of these corporations like Target then went all in. Pride Month. They went all in. And it was great until about things were happening in the culture independent of who was the current president. Things were just happening. And so because of the internet. And so by 2021, 2022, can't underestimate the effect of COVID and the lockdowns and what happened the Memorial Day weekend of 2020 in Minneapolis. Yeah. But in social media, you can post what people say and what they did say and make a history of it. And that began to happen. All this stuff began to happen. And then there begins to get, you know, there's this, what I'm calling here a legacy Western advance. Conventional, traditional Western, and what they thought was legacy. A legacy thing is the thing from the past. That's what legacy means. But you've now moved on. Well, legacy is making a comeback. And so legacy never really went away. Legacy Western culture. So these people are out there. And now there's a backlash against intersectional feminism and its morality. And so, you know, Pride Month went great up until 2023. But then something happened in 2024, that didn't go so well because people took their phones out and they went to these displays in Target and they showed these little kids' clothes. And you know, the mothers, it's 30-something mothers going shopping. So look at this, look at these clothes they want to sell my kid. You know, and it amounts to just blatant child grooming. I've taken pictures of them myself. And so that gets out there. And once that gets out there in the normal sphere and a reality, and everybody sees it in the light of day, it doesn't look nearly as virtuous as it does in a social media account when you get control of the narrative. So he puts out it in the world. It looks terrible. There's a backlash against Target. Sales start to drop. So 2024, they radically cut back on that Pride Month stuff. But now, what happened? Well, what happened was now they've enraged their own side. So they managed to thread the needle and enrage the traditional Westerners. And now also the DEI people, because now because once you go in for a penny, in for a pound, you can never leave. It's like the mob. Right? You don't just say, you don't just walk away from the mob and say, I'm leaving. Oh, okay, well, it's nice doing business with you, enjoy your retirement. It doesn't work like that. So they managed to infuriate both sides. And now that's where they are. So now this latest Pride Month, 2025 was mostly just a June. I don't know if you noticed, but it was just June.
I've never paid much attention to Dark, so I don't follow what's going on there, other than I've heard some things about it. But, I noticed, I'm a big baseball fan, I like to watch Tigers. And I would not, if I were to attend a game, I would not be able to attend a game during June because of all the
Yes.
Pride Month stuff. This June, I didn't hear a mention
Yeah.
of broadcast of Pride Month one time.
Yeah. Not good for business anymore. Not good for, it was always, what did I say about DEI? It's a grift. It's about the money. And so once these corporations realized they were only going to lose, I mean, Starbucks, hello, Starbucks right here in my hand. But Starbucks had an incident in Philadelphia, 2020. Oh, all the stuff that happened about 2020, it's unbelievable. But they had an incident where a couple of guys had to get thrown out of the Starbucks. I think it was a setup because they weren't buying anything and they were just sitting there, and that's against policy. So the barista threw them out. Actually, the manager of the thing threw him out. I think it was the manager. Well, they promptly sued. They wouldn't leave, so the cops came and arrested them and so forth. But then they sued, and they won. And Starbucks ended up giving them millions and millions. I don't remember. We could look up the amount, but millions of dollars. Starbucks shut themselves down for an afternoon, and they sent everybody through sensitivity training, and they've opened up their bathrooms to whoever wants to use the bathroom, which is to say prostitutes and drug addicts and so forth. So who's going to sit in a restaurant with the endless flow of prostitutes and drug addicts headed to the bathroom and back, or just sitting in the place? And so here's the talk about, infuriating both sides. They had to pay the two guys millions of dollars, maybe tens of millions. And then what happened was they didn't fire the guy responsible in the Starbucks for throwing them out, because that would have looked bad, because he had a certain demographic associated with him. So they went above him to the regional manager, who was fireable, and they fired her. So she sued as well and won $25 million. So they ended up paying.
Isn't the female part of a certain demographic?
But another element of her complexion was not, we're back to oppressor versus oppressed right here. She was in this class and not that class. But, it's kind of like, I can get my head through that television. So you ram your head into it and you don't quite make it all the way through. So you step back, you know what? I think I really can't get my head all the way through that television. So you take another shot at it and you go all the way through the television. That's what Target and Starbucks do. They manage to get themselves in a situation where everybody hates them, and they end up paying money to everybody. And so now everybody's trying to figure out how to navigate, these companies trying to figure out how to navigate, because they did it to themselves. Once you put that DI stuff up on the website, everybody notices when you take it down. Disney is next on the block. They're already deep trouble on this stuff. They went all in. That's a kid's platform. Well, who is your audience? 30-something moms with 8-year-old sons and daughters, moms and fathers, right? I mean, that's your demographic. Well, they don't care about Pride Month. They want to take their kid to a kid-friendly, family-friendly amusement park, or family-friendly Disney Plus channel, So they got caught up in all of this stuff, and now they can't find a way back out again. At least not without, Now the latest one is Cracker Barrel.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
What was
They never learn.
I just started hearing something this week.
They was talking about that yesterday. And Linda looked up some white woman said need to take the barrel, the man in the barrel off because he's white.
So they,
Now they're making a generic sign.
they went to the DEI hire, CEO, who decided that Cracker Barrel needed to be fixed. And so they spent millions of dollars on whoever decides this stuff to come up with the logo on the right to replace the logo on the left.
I was in the Cracker Barrel yesterday, and it's already on all the.
Yeah.
maps. Oh,
They completely redesigned the inside. So their stock dropped. Immediate pain, money, immediate. Hey, Cracker Barrel, Bud Light, Camping World, Tractor Supply. Who's the latest one
I
after
would
that?
never have thought Cracker Barrel would have gone into that. That's-
You know,
yeah, if you've seen the design of the new stores I saw them on TV and very generic, crappy looking. Moves the whole audience, what you want.
Yeah, it's very
Yeah.
frustrating.
so anyway, this doesn't have a lot to do with the church, except that the church, well, actually it does. The church gets caught up in this stuff. We'll get back to Drew Brees and Josh McDowell in a minute. Church gets caught up in this stuff. It gets infiltrated. Yeah, all right, we're back to this here. And the exact same things come into play in the church. So you can go to these church websites and see exactly the same thing about DEI and LGBTQ and so on and so forth. And so the question then becomes, what do you do? Well, the first thing is you have to recognize it when you see it. And there are certain words that are used that put me on alert immediately when I hear people use certain words and phrases like inclusion. Because how do you oppose inclusion? Somebody says, we need to be more inclusive. Well, everybody in the room is obligated to say, oh, yes, we need to be more inclusive. And I'm going, well, wait a minute. Why? What's wrong with us? What's wrong with us that inclusivity is going to fix? Tell me our deficiency. And tell me why it's a deficiency. What is the lack? You define the lack for me and why that deficiency is intolerable. And then we'll have a discussion. Because I can tell you right now, there's other churches in this area that are looking an awful lot like each other all across the congregation. None of those people feel guilty about the way they are. And more power to them. I have no problem with it. So when I hear these words, I immediately go on alert. And that's why I don't like, I'm going to do it again. We'll get back to him in a minute. Yeah. So I kind of picked on Crusade last week a little bit. I might have overstated the problem with their symbol here. But anyway, this is one of their, here it is, oneness and diversity. The mere fact that you feel like you have to have a section on gender at all seems already to me to be a concession to the world. Because now you're playing on their playing field. Now you're using their language. Now their referees come into play. Because what they want is for you, they control the playing field and they are the referees. So they want you to step out onto their playing field and play by their rules with their referees. And we do it all the time. Yeah, and who is the gatekeepers? The people who define what is the oppressor and the oppressed. I reject all of it. I'm not even gonna, it's not like I have no thoughts on oppressor and oppressed, or gender or diversity. I do have thoughts. I will not concede to you. I won't concede your authority to your authority. You have no standing. I owe you no explanation. You have no place with me, period, whatsoever. And so here, LGBT plus questions. Well, you've kind of acknowledged already that LGBT is a thing that needs to be addressed. But what is LGBT? Q, plus, IA, whatever letters you want to add to it. What is it? At the end of the day, it's a moral system. It's a way of looking at the world. That's what it is. Is that moral system in line with Christian morality or the biblical worldview, or is it not? There's no question about it. It's self-consciously, openly, irreconcilably hostile to the Christian worldview. So why are we acknowledging it at all? That's my problem with this. It's not even that I think what they're going to say is wrong. I am resistant at the very start of even having the discussion. I won't acknowledge your legitimacy at all, or your questions. I won't acknowledge them.
Well, they're on the phone. But definitely had that issue.
Yeah, they've got, yeah. I mean, in their case, I agree with that, but in their case, they think of this as engaging with the culture. Well, what culture what culture do you want to engage with? Did Paul want to engage with the pagan culture of his day? The closest you see him to engaging with the pagan culture is Acts chapter 17. Now, I looked at all your gods, and you had a lot of them, and so, but what I'm telling you is there is the creator of all things, and that's all there is. That's the only one he acknowledged. I see that in all ways. Actually, let's go there, because that's a good point. Thank you. I should have thought of this. This is his engagement with the culture. It might be the only example I can think of off the top of my head where he did that.
Be honest. The famous one.
This is him giving account, and remember, he's got some. This is not voluntary. He's been called before the leadership in Athens, the seat of power in Greece. Let me get rid of these footnotes. They seem to think I want to see the footnotes because they always turn them back on when I go away. It's like they're waiting for me to navigate away from the screen, the page, so they can turn the footnotes back on. So they haul him before the magistrates. They want to know what, verse 19, may we know what this new teaching is which you are proclaiming. You're bringing some strange things to our ears, mainly about the resurrection. We want to know what these things mean. And then Luke provides helpful insight about what it is that what kind of people he's dealing with below that. But anyway, now what we call the Sermon on Mars Hill, which isn't a sermon. Jesus' name is never mentioned in this sermon. There is no gospel. There is a statement about judgment, but there is no gospel as we understand gospel. He gets men of Athens. I observe that you are very religious in all respects. Superstitious would be another word you could put in there. For while I was passing through and examining the objects of your worship, I also found an altar with this inscription, to an unknown God, just in case we missed one. Therefore, what you worship in ignorance, this I proclaim to you, the God who is the unknown God, the God who made the world and all things in it. All hail the Creator. Says the Jew whose senses are inflamed by this pagan idolatry, which is an affront to the Creator of all things, as an Orthodox Pharisaical Jew. Since he is Lord of heaven and earth, well, if he's the Lord of heaven and earth, what about all these other deities? He's Lord of the heaven and earth, who made the heavens and the earth. That's what he's saying. He does not dwell in temples made with hands. This is an insult to every one of their gods. Nor is he served by human hands like all of your gods, as though he needed anything, since he himself gives. He's the giver of all things. He does not take. So on and so forth. For in him we live and move and exist or have our being, as even some of your own poets have said, we are his offspring or children. Being then the children of, now he corrects them. Being then the children of God, we ought not to think that the divine nature is like gold or silver or stone, your gods, an image formed by the art and thought of man. Therefore, having overlooked the times of ignorance, God is now declaring to men that all people everywhere should repent of things like this that you're doing here, because he has fixed a day in which he will judge the world in righteousness through a man whom he has appointed, having furnished proof to all men, and this was their sticking point, by raising him from the dead. He finally gets to their problem by raising him from the dead. That's his response to the culture.
Used context they were used to.
He did, but he condemned it.
He did.
He
but it's
distinguished.
understood. Like,
Yes, yes, he did.
We shall hear you again concerning this.
Yeah, and then
This
they-
is above care.
Yeah, and then they,
We don't know that he ever had.
yeah, then he kind, but yeah, I take your point, yeah. So how do you engage with the culture without conceding to it? That's my problem with this. That's my problem with this.
So you want that section to say, don't do it.
Nothing. I wanted to say nothing. If you are talking to a human being, say something. If they want to talk about something, one-on-one, or somebody asks you to come and give an account like Paul, that's fine. But to do that as if LGBTQ is a, what is it? It's the degenerate morality of Christianity's most ferocious enemy. That's what it is. That's what it is. It's not a collection of people. That's not the point. So that's my problem with it. And it's debatable. I mean, somebody can say, no, I think we should address it. You're not going to get any points for this. It's not like the people, you really think the intersectional feminists are going to give Crew, oh, look at that, we're going to give them a pass? No, they're not going to do that. Oh, that's a good point. Who is it written for?
Is it
Who-
written for the LGBT people looking at this and seeing what God says about them in the Bible, or is it for Christians who support this?
Good question.
Well, they had a problem with that. Yeah, they're trying to unwind themselves from that problem. But to me, all you can do to make them happy is give them their way. They are never satisfied. So you start here. Now there is no mutual understanding. Well, we, the LGBT community, have met with the leaders of Crew, and we've reached a welcome, what do you want to call it? An understanding with each other. So we're very thankful for that. That day ain't coming. Because they're gonna want more. They're gonna try to take more and more and more and more. They never stop. That's the Marxist way. Every single time. Every single time. Speaking of,
They could have addressed it in their statement of faith, saying God created one man.
I'm sure they do, yeah. No, I'm not saying they're wrong.
Okay.
Yes, that's right. Just, you can say something about what you believe without acknowledging the legitimacy of the world's moral system.
That's why I was bringing up Lucifer.
That's a good question. My hunch is they're writing it for some guy or gal that's gonna go onto the website and be curious enough to actually want to come and talk, which is fine.
Probably is written for that second bullet there, donor relations.
Ah, no.
There's, actually, no, I was a donor. The donors, you think it's the LGBTQ people who are donating? No. The donors are guys like me. So, I gotta think, I don't know, I mean, I sound like I'm attacked, I'm just, you don't have to do, I don't think you have to do this. I don't think it's wise. Like I said, every single bit of this, I'm not saying any of it's wrong. I think there's male and female. Two dignified paths. So,
I can think about this place. You ever met a young person who was like really scared and confused at the same time, and you're just trying to figure out if they're gonna be yelled at if they come ask questions?
Yeah.
That might let them know they're not gonna be yelled at.
Yeah, you're probably gonna see them show up on campus and you can talk to them. Probably not gonna,
Maybe a lot
So-
of them don't wanna see you in person, because then they can turn off the phone in your phone.
so who's gonna, back to his point, who is this written for? Is it written for that person? Yeah, maybe I'm overreacting. What do you wanna call, what am I? I'm a snarling, right-wing, evangelical Christian lunatic, so paranoid lunatic. By their measure, I mean, what's interesting is I'm a populist. And populism was the domain of the other side, not the evangelical Christians. They were the statists. But things have changed dramatically.
The term sexuality there up there reminded me of something. It's probably not sexuality so much as sex. Gail sent me a video clip this week this past week, I guess it is now, of a pastor teaching his church a different understanding of biblical sex. And his says when the Lord, outlaws adultery and stuff, he's talking about prostitution.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with having sex outside of marriage.
Yeah. They do the same.
Church
Yeah.
law.
Yeah. What church was this?
I don't know. I have to
Yeah.
try to find the video and send it to you.
So yeah, maybe I'm overreacting. I might say everything on here. But I would not nod this way. I would just leave it out. How do we feel about these issues? Here's how because you kind of concede that they're LGBT issues. They're not, they're just,
Well, what about churches making a stance in their constitutions against same-sex marriage? Most churches have done that today, conservative churches, because of it being legalized and
Yeah.
needing to make a statement, we're not gonna do that.
Yeah,
But still, that's still something similar.
but there's also, you can be set up, so you'll have two people come in. They'll hang around in the church and then they want to get married.
Yep.
And then you say, well, we don't do same-sex marriage. It's a setup, because this is happening. And then they say, well, it's not in your constitution, we're being excluded. And now we're talking lawsuits. So now you put it, you do one of two things. You put it in your constitution,
Sicker.
or you have to be a member for a year in order to get married in this church. So you have to hang around for a year and become a member. You have to hang around and be a member for a year before you can get married in the church. And most people can't maintain that kind of,
Yep.
they're gonna say, no, we're not willing to go, we'll go find another one. So the question is, how are you gonna prevent yourself from being a target? And you might think it's unlikely, but tell that to the churches that have been targeted.
No.
Okay, I picked on Crusade long enough.
Was playing into the press request.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you just have to remember what LGBT, I put out a slide, which we're not gonna be able to talk about now, because it's too late, but, where did it go? Where did my LGBT slide go? Here it is. To me, these things are almost interchangeable. Third wave intersectional feminism, LGBTQIA+, which is where we're at now, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. All of those people believe all of those things. They're indistinguishable in that sense. And so you can ask yourself, what do they think about all these things? Truth, reality, binary difference, Genesis chapter 1, male and female, created in the image of God. Right and wrong, yes, no, you name it. Conventional moral codes, I'm gonna misspell the word here, can't take it. Conventional moral codes and constraints, what do they think about those things? Well, think about what the Christians think about those things. Now think, what does third wave intersectional third wave feminism think of those things? They could not possibly be more polar opposite, top to bottom. Not only do you get to define your own reality in their world, you can just decide that you're a woman today. And I too have to believe you are. and have to use the pronouns that you prefer to use. Well, we've just gone from, we're not in individualism anymore. You do you, I'll do me. Now we're into, I'm doing me and you have to submit to it. And if you use the wrong pronouns, I may try to do a lawsuit, which has happened in teaching, in education. Teachers have been fired for using the wrong pronouns. They promptly sue. And then the school district has to pay often millions of dollars. How did it go? But they had no reinforcement against that. They left themselves wide open to it because that's the nature of the thing. And that's what the companies did. They left themselves wide open to this stuff. And the churches leave themselves wide open to this stuff. Anybody can walk into our door right now and take their place in there, and everybody's going to be delighted. And nobody's going to, this is the 9 mark stuff, and nobody's going to ask too many questions. And they pretty soon they're hanging around for days and for weeks and months, and we love that. And then after a certain amount of time, they want to become a member. They become a member. Now here comes some more. You get enough of that going, guess what happens? Your church gets taken over. Happens all the time.
Perhaps in a sense, the answer to who it's written to could be the oppressor and the oppressed. The oppressor supposedly, originally this organization was put together to proclaim the truth. And then when you address this, it's kind of watering the truth down. And in terms of the oppressed, it's an attempt to appease them, but it won't work.
Yeah, they're never happy. They're never, ever, that's Josh McDowell. Let's look at that. Well, actually, let's look at Drew Brees. I mentioned Drew Brees a couple weeks ago or last week. He got himself in hot water and he kept apologizing. Drew Brees is one of the great quarterbacks in the NFL. He was a Purdue quarterback. To this day, I was absolutely amazed at Drew Brees at Purdue University. Michigan State played a game against him. And I remember one of the wide receivers caught 21 passes, one receiver. That's a whole game for the whole team. 21 catches. They just demolished us. It was unbelievable. But anyway, it's one of the great, he's untouchable because what matters is money. So Drew Brees makes money for his organization, which was New Orleans. I have no idea where he is now. But look at the date there. Is he? June 9, 2020. What was going on in June of 2020? What had just happened 2 weeks ago? What had just happened 2 weeks ago? George Floyd, the Colin Kaepernick thing. Now all of a sudden, you're supposed to kneel during the national anthem and so on and so forth, which seems curiously like bowing the knee to something in submission. So Drew Brees, bless his heart, Drew Brees he just said in public in a press conference or something, yeah, I prefer to stand for the national anthem. Outrage. You cannot please these people. He didn't say it was wrong to kneel, I don't think. He just said, I prefer to stand. So the outrage industry kicks in, swarming. He's Drew Brees. He can say anything. The money is what matters. He's not going to. They're not going to fire him. He's not like a school teacher where they fire him and get a new one. It's not going to happen. It's Drew Brees. He's on $100 million contract or something like that. But anyway, this is Babylon Bee, which writes satire articles about it. Drew Brees kept apologizing. He'd apologized. This is the point of the show trial, the Marxist show trial. The point of the trial is not to get you to be contrite and apologize. Yes, the point of the show trial is to get you to apologize, but not so that you can be welcomed back into the community, like Matthew 13 or 18, which is it?
Matthew 18.
Where you're welcome. No. The point of the apology is to parade your head or your scalp around and say, "See, we told you." So he apologized. That was not good enough for him. So he apologized, and then he apologized, and then he apologized. And so they finally wrote this satire. In an unprecedented display of public contrition, New Orleans Saints quarterback Drew Brees set a new record over the weekend for apologies by an NFL quarterback saying he was sorry 742 times in the space of 48 hours. After controversially stating his personal preference for standing during the national anthem. Yeah, it seems like a dream now, but that really
Did
happened.
he really say 742 times?
No, they made the number up.
That's the hard part with Babylon B, you never know which is parts.
Well, that's the point. They get Snoped. So that pretty soon Snopes has to, so Snopes might have done, they probably didn't this time, but they could have, Babylon B would have been hoping Snopes would have done a Snopes article on why this is false.
Yeah.
Did Drew Bees really apologize 700? No, he did not apologize. And then Babylon B's like this, we got him again. Let's see. Southern Baptist, go with Josh McDowell, who said some things about race in a talk, which I listened to. Doesn't matter what he said, actually. The point is, he apologized profusely. So the question is, would he then be welcomed back? Absolutely not. Therefore, Josh McDowell has announced he is stepping back. So after 40 years, I don't know how long, of ministry on behalf of this organization, he's just kind of cast out. You know, by mutual agreement, we feel that, you know, we have agreed that Josh should step away, you know, so he gets to, after all that work, he gets to retire in disgrace, essentially.
What were his comments?
They would be by the standards of the, of DEI incendiary. I didn't have a problem with them, and neither would you. And I think, but you can go hunt him down yourself. I'm not gonna speak for him or anybody else. That was them. Anyway, the point is that, where's the, yeah, this right here. So was that good enough? He apologized profusely, he retired, and so on and so forth. Not exactly. Kyle Howard, a theologian and racial trauma counselor, was sharply critical. It's not critical. It's not an apology if you don't name your sin or actually name your offense. But this is the part. Carson Whitnauer, a former director at Ravi Zachariah International Ministries, tweeted that he'd like to meet with McDowell. So was Carson happy with the apology? We'd like to meet with McDowell during his pause in ministry. Does anybody really think McDowell is going to ever be welcomed back? Pause in ministry. Whitnauer has spoken at length about the pain both Josh and his son, Sean McDowell, caused to former employees when they did a complimentary podcast with the executive. So he agrees to go, I don't know what he said, but he agrees to do a podcast for somebody. And this is the result. I appreciate your commitment. This is what he says to McDowell. This is what matters. I appreciate your commitment to listening I appreciate your commitment to listening and growth. Does this guy sound like a Christian? Or a third wave intersectional feminist? I would like to talk to you about reconciliation during this time. It seems to me he wants a special kind of apology just for him, you know, I don't know. But the point being, you're never going to please these people. So don't try. It was 10:15. We didn't really finish. I was going to go over church decline. There's Southern Baptist decline recently. All the churches have been in decline. All the denominations. I don't know that it's a bad thing.
No, but they've taken a big hit on the DEI stuff.
Yeah, they've been at war. They've been coming after the Southern Baptist Convention since the late 70s. And they fought them off the first time. I don't think they fought them off this time. So they finally, and they'll destroy the Southern Baptists too, like they have the Episcopals and so on and so forth. But we're gonna run out of time, so we can't do that.
And next week we go.
Next week we'll be having brunch.
So next week we have the brunch, so no Sunday school class, and then we'll pick up with Genesis. I think we're in about 23 or 4 or something like that.
Can't remember where we left off now.
And, all right, well, thanks for joining Kay, especially all summer. Appreciate it. Everybody else,
Thanks, Gary.
sure thing. See ya.
Thank you, Gary.
See you, Gabe.